President Trump defending his decision to fire the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner as we're standing by for him to announce a replacement. We also have new CNN reporting on what set him off, what happened behind the scenes before he ousted that top labor official, accusing her without evidence of rigging the job numbers. CNN's Elena Treen is at the White House now. She has this new reporting. What more have you learned? And Elena, what more are we hearing from the president just speaking moments ago?
Yeah, well, let me start with the second part of this, what President Trump is continuing to say this morning, because I'd remind you, this firing, of course, of the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics came Friday after that worse than expected jobs report, including some of the revisions down from previous months. And this morning he's still talking about it, arguing it's, the system is rigged, that it's political, all things that he's and other officials as well continue to argue without any real evidence. And it comes, of course, as we know, that the president said that midweek this week, at some point in the next couple of days, he is expected to name her replacement. But I want you to listen to what he told CNBC just moments ago, Jessica.
It is antiquated, but it's also very political. And, I had an election recently where I did very well, won every swing state, won the popular vote, won everything, all right? Won. It's, I think 87% of the counties were Republican up. That's never happened before. And yet I had to go through hell. And just days before the election, they put out numbers that it was like the country was on fire. It was doing so well. And then they did a revision about 2 weeks later, and the revision was down by almost 900,000 jobs. You remember that? And I said, I said, what would have happened? What would have happened if I lost? Think of it. I would have said they gave phony numbers, and then they revised them a week and a half later.
All right, Jessica, the reason I wanted you to listen to that is because it's so in line with the reporting that we have about what really led to this decision to oust Dr. Erica McIntyre, the head of BLS. So part of it is because, as you could tell, Trump was fixated on this even before he came into office. I remember covering him on the campaign trail, and he was often railing against the job reports, particularly the revisions, and saying that they didn't seem right, okay? And then what I was told in the lead up and what led to this decision on Friday was that even though he had brought up McIntyre's name before, given she is a Biden appointee, something the president does not like, he doesn't like having Biden appointees in very high positions within his administration, he didn't really have any reason to try and axe her before Friday, because a lot of the jobs reports we saw in the first few months of this administration were actually very good. We saw the president and many other top officials here at the White House argue that the data in those jobs reports showed that the economy was doing well. But what really got under his skin, and this is what you're referring to about what set him off, what really got under his skin with that Friday jobs report was not necessarily the slowing of the economy and the adding of less jobs than they had anticipated. It was the revisions of the previous months that they had celebrated, May and June, that actually the number of jobs added was lower than they had previously said. This is what one White House official told me. They said, quote, "That's what set him off. He saw the revisions and knew something was awry for it to be changed so drastically. And this isn't a first-time thing. Considering so many companies make decisions based off these numbers, it's an issue that needed to be fixed." And so, like I said, this was something he had kind of been thinking about previously, but Friday is what really came to make this decision. Now, I will say as well, we have some reporting that some officials here at the White House had tried to argue with Trump, sought to offer up explanations for why perhaps the economy was slowing down. But it was Sergio Gore, one of his personnel officials here in the White House, that was the one to remind him that Erica McIntyre was a Biden appointee. So that just gives you some insight into all of this. Now, my latest conversations with people here at the White House, they say he has not yet made a decision on who he is going to replace her with. But again, he has promised to do so midweek. And then just very, very quickly, Jessica, Trump did make some other news during that CNBC interview. He was talking about who he's going to try and replace Fed Chair Jerome Powell with. He said that he's taken Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent out of the running. He was someone that previously Trump had said was his top pick for that. And now he's saying it's kind of a battle of the Kevins. A White House, one economist, Kevin Warsh, someone the president is close with, but also his director of National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, and some others as well. So stay tuned for some of that as the president continues to weigh that decision. Powell's not up until next spring.
All right, news from the president early this morning. Elena Trine from the White House, thank you so much for that. John?
All right, I just need to play again a little bit of what the president said because it needs some important context. And by that, I mean corrections. Listen.
Before the election, they put out numbers that it was like the country was on fire, was doing so well. And then they did a revision about 2 weeks later, and the revision was down by almost 900,000 jobs. You remember that? And I said, I said, what would have happened? What would have happened if I lost? Think of it. I would have said they gave phony numbers, and then they revised them a week and a half later.
All right, so that was wrong, wrong, and wrong. All right, November 1st, just before the election, there was a terrible jobs report. Just 12,000 jobs added. That was November 1st, just days before the election. 12,000 jobs added November 1st, almost as bad as the 2 months we just had during the Trump administration, May and June. After the election, the numbers were revised upward. So that's the second wrong. President Trump was wrong that there was a good jobs report before the election, wrong that it was revised upward. Downward. It was revised upward after the election. He's also wrong about the timing of the huge revision. It came last August, where they said that 800,000 fewer jobs had been added in the last year. It wasn't after the election. All of the revisions that were made in theory before the election last year may very well have been in Trump's favor. So wrong, wrong, and wrong there. With us now, CNN political commentator, host of CNN Smerconish, Michael Smerconish, who I have to say we haven't had a chance to speak to on TV in a while, but thanks to modern technology, we look forward to speaking to you a lot more. I want to talk about the actual revisions themselves, Michael, and how they may just change the prism. You talk to so many people every day. It paints a very different picture when you have months jobs added of 14,000 and 19,000 in May and June. And I wonder what you're hearing people say about the health of this economy, what concerns they have.
It fits a larger narrative that really concerns me about diminished faith in American institutions. Our court system, legal system writ large, politicians, law enforcement. People just don't know who they can believe and on who they can rely. John, I was thinking something as I was watching Elena's report, and it's this. It used to mean something if a local official would call for a federal investigation. That's it. We're going to bring in the feds. Because that signified to people it's going to be no bullshit. Because the feds, they don't play local political games. Those days are over. And the next time that labor numbers come out with the president's pick, who's going to believe them? I guess half the country. It's reminiscent to me of this recent situation at Smithsonian where they've now sanitized, the impeachment display. And people are just going to buy whatever truth suits their political objective. It's not a one-off. This is part of a much larger and very serious problem.